right. Pardon noise. We have our landscapers around killing all of the plants in our neighborhood. And we have people cutting down trees in our neighborhood, but definitely not planting any, because, you know, why not? So by the time you see this, I'm recording this mid-July. I'm assuming it's going to be mid or late August. But I have actually just watched RPG Imagining's first video on the solo playthrough, and you can tell maybe hinting at what I have here. It's a box from Chaosium, and it's one that I have been kind of eagerly awaiting, which may be a little odd for some reasons. And those reasons, as you may know from previous videos if you have watched them that I have recorded, fantasy isn't my genre, typically speaking, although I'm warming to some aspects of it. Sorry about the vibration on the video. That was a little less cut than I expected. Fantasy's not my genre. Woo. I love Chaosium. They always pack this stuff well. Alright. And in particular, I've never been particularly interested in Arthurian mythology. But recently, not that recently, a couple of years ago, I picked up Prince Valiant by Greg Stafford, not put out by Chaosium, but a cool game. And it's based on the comic strip by Hal Foster, which has a very Arthurian bent to it. There they go, rolling past again. And recently I have, for most of this year, I've been working my way through Le Mort d'Arthur, which is a challenge. Thomas Mallory. It's old. It's if my brain is working right, it's pre-Shakespeare. And it is not easygoing reading. It feels like reading some of the extra boring parts of the Bible half the time. And a lot of very strange and archaic use of language, a lot of words that we don't use, etc., etc., etc. And I don't know. It's also very meandering. You know, it doesn't... It definitely doesn't go from A to B to C. It just sort of goes from like A to 13 to green. And that's not my favorite thing in the world. Anyway, I've been working my way through it. It does give me a bit of a handling on some Arthurian ideas and how very different the morality is as presented in this book. Anyway, what do I have? Well, you probably already know because it's in the video title. I have the Pendragon Starter Set. Pendragon Starter Set by Greg Stafford. All you need for adventure in a world of chivalry and honor. Here's the back of the box. It's going to be very shiny. I'm going to be very careful and cut along the edge here. Might have overstated it when I said I was cutting along the edge. There we go. Pendragon is a venerable game. It has been around for quite some time. And I know it was, you know, I say I know, it is said by many that when Greg Stafford was working on this edition, when he died, he believed this to be his best work. So that's interesting. You know, he made RuneQuest is the big Greg Stafford thing that I know. Here's the dice. Primarily 6-sided with the 20-sided. It is a D20 system, although not like the Dungeons & Dragons D20 system. What's in the box? A usual sort of thing. Let's see if I can even read today. Book 1, Adventure, The Adventure of the Sword and the Stone. That's the solo adventure. Book 2, Fabled Realm, includes the game masters and players, intended for game masters and players alike. Goes into further detail in the game's setting, core mechanics, and more than enough to get your game up and running. And Book 3, The Sword Campaign, a detailed 5-year campaign. I have heard when it says detailed 5-year campaign, it's actually a 3-year campaign, not a 5-year campaign, so I don't know. Let's see. 4 appendices. That's like some separate sheets in the back. Pre-generated characters, 8 of them. Battle cards. Oh, that's right, it's got cards. Dice, we saw. Yep. On the back, ad for RuneQuest. We have Book 1. And having just, again, watched RPG Imaginings video on this, I know that this is a depiction of an actual scene from this scenario, so that makes sense and it's good. I like the art. It has, there's, solid line art. There's some nice full color images. Oh, I like that. I really like that. All right, a lot of this looks like it's more line art. But, there is, there's some, I'm not going to show it all off, but yeah, there's this. This is just nice artwork. Boy, I like this a lot. Okay. And there are some images here. So, this is a solo adventure. Yeah. I also just noticed this. The maps on the back of the book form a map, kind of like, if I remember right, I think that's true in the RuneQuest starter set as well. And I echo Orcus Dorcas in mentioning it is a little disappointing that there isn't just a fold-out map in the box. It would be nice. It's not a deal breaker, but the Call of Cthulhu one had it, the RuneQuest one had it, and they've got the map, so it would be nice if that map was in here, but I'm not going to begrudge them that. Fabled Realm, this is the rules and setting for the 6th edition of Pendragon. Now, I have only played Pendragon one time, literally one session. I was a guest player in an ongoing game. Yes, we've got this map. I would love to have a fold-out version of this map, something that I could theoretically get framed or put under a plexi if I was going to be playing it on the table, that kind of thing. But anyway, so I played it one time, and it wasn't in, the actual Pendragon setting. It wasn't Arthurian. It was somebody's home, homebrew samurai fantasy story, and it was interesting. Again, I didn't play long enough, I think, to get a real grasp on the actual game. So, and especially because I wasn't playing in the Arthurian age, I didn't get any sort of handling on that. And going back to my thing, I don't have a particular connection to Arthur and the Arthurian mythology. It wasn't ever one that particularly captured my imagination. I really enjoyed the movie Excalibur, but I also like weird films, and it was weird. I enjoyed the film The Green Knight, which is also weird. But many of the Arthurian film adaptations didn't do a lot for me. And it was a character. Arthur is a character. Arthur, Batman, and Robin Hood, and I would say Superman now, are characters where I often will sort of in my brain, I'm like, okay, retire them for a couple decades. Just don't touch them. Don't do anything. Don't make a film. Don't write a book. Give them some time to breathe. Alice in Wonderland. give it a rest for a while, let a generation go by before you do another adaptation. That's what I have been sort of saying for a while. And I've been saying that about Arthur for 20 years. So again, that's maybe why I've never actually gotten into Pendragon. However, times have changed. I have changed my opinion on some things, and I have started to, I have started to gain a sort of appreciation and interest for this story cycle than I had before, and I am intrigued by it. A part of what intrigues me about it is I find it very funny that there are so many pedants out there who feel the need to be correctorsons about your interpretation of Arthur and the Arthurian mythology, and really like to nitpick every detail and, oh, this isn't right, this is a terrible edit. I saw so much of it when The Green Knight came out, and I'm sure it had nothing to do with the actor playing the lead character, and it was everything to do with people's take on the Arthurian mythology, and that was all that it was. But I just find it very funny that people get so nitpicky about something that is inherently so inconsistent. There's very little accuracy and consistency even internally. It's, again, like reading the Bible. It is not internally consistent, so how can your interpretation of it from the outside be consistent? And how can you be expected to stay true to the source material when the material itself doesn't stay true to itself? I find that sort of interesting, fascinating, and I think open for so much interpretation that then makes it a more intriguing game setting. I like the idea of playing on tropes and subverting them, manipulating them, sometimes holding fast to them as an almost subversion. I like all of that sort of thing. So it's made me more interested in trying Pendragon. I've accidentally picked up some of this stuff. So here's the book 3, the Sword Campaign. I'm just going to do a quick flip through because I don't want to give too much away. We have an introduction. Sword Campaign is a collection of scenarios that plunge the player knights into tumultuous early years of King Arthur's reign. From drawing the sword in the stone to the boy king's desperate fight against the northern kings who would steal his crown, to the gifting of the most legendary sword in the world. Each scenario is intended to comprise the main adventure for the game year. Other events emerge through play. As Game Master, it is your job to interweave these events into the main narrative. Look for opportunities to make Game Master characters significant in the lives of player knights. Have fun and do not shy away from going off script from time to time. So, cool. That's, good. And that is, I know that there are unique qualities to RuneQuest as a game. And I think that was really a Greg Stafford core principle, is that he wanted games that created a certain thing. It's like Colville talks about this in some of his videos about the rules, the way a game rewards you is like what it wants you to do. And I think that does capture a certain thing, that there are games that are designed to capture a certain kind of thing. And it's why I'm always a little hesitant about Universal games, and I'm very hesitant about using one game to try to tell every kind of story. I see this a lot, obviously, with the big elephant in the room, Dungeons and Dragons, where people take Dungeons and Dragons, a game about killing monsters, and they try to make all kinds of other types of games, horror games, science fiction, like full-on space opera. I don't think it works. Personally, I don't think it works. I really don't think it works with horror. Just gonna come out and say that. I don't think it works in horror. Can you mix horror into it? Yeah, sure. But it's not made for that. There are games that are made for that. There are games that do it well. There are games that are made for it. And I think that what I like about some of Stafford's work, and I think I see this in RuneQuest and I see that in Pendragon, is that it is designed for a certain type of storytelling. And I think that the person whose game I played in that did a sort of samurai fantasy take on with using Pendragon understood that it's not necessarily a game that's going to work for everything, but for the kind of stories that he was doing with the samurai thing, elements of Pendragon really worked. Yes. But is it going to work for a Call of Cthulhu scenario? No, because it's mechanically pushing toward doing something else. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I like that in doing that, in mechanically attempting to create a certain type of story, it encourages a certain type of play, including really being conscientious about morality and honor and the right thing to do, but not necessarily in context with 21st century American pop culture. It is morality and honor in this version of the Middle Ages, which is not even a historic version of the Middle Ages. That's the thing. This isn't a history book. It is a mythology. It is a fantasy story. It is fairy tales, It's, Arthur, almost certainly not a real person. Maybe elements of that story are based on various different real people. Maybe. And, is there somebody named Arthur? Yeah, but is he related to this? Probably not. Anyway, was he a Roman soldier? Maybe one of the stories was based on a Roman soldier, but not the whole thing. No, it is an amalgam. It is a mythology based on all kinds of different stories. It is not history. And the world created in this is not historically accurate. That's why they're doing late Middle Ages stuff in the early Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. I mean, I think the story is supposed to start in like 500 or something like that, and they're going around acting like it's like 1300s, and it's like, no. But in that sense, it almost prepares you to watch Golden Age Hollywood film versions of the Middle Ages, which are so rife with inaccuracy. They almost make Braveheart look historically accurate. I say almost because nothing's going to make Braveheart look historically accurate. But anyhow, it's fantasy. It's fantasy. It's inconsistent. It becomes your own thing. It gives you its tools and paintbrushes to let you make your own picture. And I really like that anyway. I feel like I really went off topic on that rant, so apologies there. I do love these little medieval style images. We even have like a woodcut style. Like, I feel like there was one edition of Ars Magica that used a lot of woodcut stuff. So I don't know what the stories are here. I don't know. Yeah, year 512. No, not at all. I'm not a medieval scholar. I don't know much about British history, but I know looking at that is not a 512 costume. Anyway, yeah, just very curious. And we've got appendices around here. I'm very curious about the Great Pendragon campaign, which is by many considered to be one of the great RPG campaigns. And and I think getting to sort of maybe the point I was trying to make in Greg Stafford recreating a certain thing, part of what makes Pendragon interesting, unique, a little different, that sort of thing, is that it is, in a sense, on a grand scale, more railroady than some games might be. the idea is, especially when you take into account something like the Great Pendragon Campaign, you are playing out the history of Arthur, Excalibur, etc., from its inception. I believe the Great Pendragon Campaign, or maybe an expanded version of it or something like that, actually does start with like Uther Pendragon and all that. You're playing out this cycle of history, and it really is kind of the whole of like the Dark Ages through maybe the early Renaissance. I don't remember exactly, but through basically when this was written, I think, condensed into a lifetime. So it's like it starts in the Dark Ages, it moves into the Middle Ages, and it moves into the late Middle Ages, all in the course of 100 years or 80 years or something like that. So it's like Cliff Notes history meshed down into one generation or a couple generations tops, which again really feels like those golden age Hollywood films where you could have, ancient Romans mixing with like just pre Renaissance knights, and maybe Native Americans like show up in Prince Valiant, and Vikings and Saracens, and all these people from all these different eras can all mix together in the way like Golden Age Hollywood films had a tendency to portray everywhere, not America and Western Europe, as being some kind of hodgepodge. So you might be in the middle of Brazil and come across an African nation. You might be traveling through sub-Saharan Africa and end up in like an almost medieval Baghdad looking place. You could definitely be in the South Pacific and come up against nearly anything at all. Atlanteans, Egyptians, sub-Saharan Africans, it doesn't matter. The South Pacific had everybody in it, apparently, in Golden Age Hollywood. And it's that kind of hodgepodging and condensing and nonsensory that I think you can embrace with Arthurian mythology, because it does take little bits of history, but it really is fantasy. It's nonsense. It didn't happen. Most of these people didn't exist. Maybe they existed, but not in the form they're presented in, like a name here, a battle there, a city there, but not the way they're presented, not all together, not involved with each other, not leading one into the other. But anyway, yeah. And in talking about, you're recreating this cycle, it doesn't mean that you don't have agency. It doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to do things and create stories for your characters that are new and exciting and bold, but it's all while this stuff is going on in the background. Kind of like if you were to do a non-anachronistic World War II set RPG campaign. You might start it in the early 1930s and play through to, like, say, 1950, and you may tell compelling stories in which you don't know the outcomes of them personally, while still having all of the things that really did happen in the background. So, there's still the invasion of Poland, there's still the genocide, there's still all of that stuff, there's still the atom bomb being dropped and all of that. It all still happens because it's part of the campaign that you're playing around, but it doesn't mean you can't tell individual interesting stories. And I think that's what the Great Pendragon Campaign and what Pendragon sort of creates is you make your own personal stories, but the overall big tale is still happening in the background and woven into what you're doing. So anyway, Appendix A, tournaments. So rules for doing tournaments, I guess those are fairly popular, even though I don't think they really happen. Anyway, again, there's not a lot of historical action. Battle, I think this is for larger battles. In rules for doing larger battles, overland movement, visiting a foreign court. I want to say that also has a foreign courtier visiting yours. I think. Oh, here's the cards. As I think it was Orcus mentioned. I'll probably like photocopy those and put them on cardstock or something. I don't think I'm going to break up the originals. And then we have our characters. Circularium. Oh, that's right. It's these. I have mixed feelings on these. I really do. I think it's a neat idea, but I think because I feel like this would just be a pain in the A. I don't even think it's 11 by 17, which if it was 11 by 17, I'd just make photocopies of these and you know, whatever. But I don't know. I like them. If they were more easily available, that would be a different thing. But we have these different various characters. As several have pointed out, there is no gender restrictions or anything like that in Pendragon. You know, and if you have a problem with that, but you don't have a problem with magic and all of the other nonsense that happens in fantasy, then I think that's your problem, not the game's problem. So, anyway, it looks interesting. It looks neat. There's a lot in this box set for the price. The price is, I believe, $30. It's not as stuffed as the RuneQuest starter, and I don't think it's maybe quite as full. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it's quite as full as the Call of Cthulhu starter, but maybe it is. Maybe it is about that same size. Anyway, I still think it's quite a lot of stuff packed into this narrow little box. It is not like some companies might produce a giant box with almost nothing inside that actually needs a cardboard divider to keep it up. Anyway, terrible, terrible, terrible box sets from a certain company that will remain unnamed. Wizards of the Coast. Anyway, this is a pretty cool looking box. I am very excited to check it out at some point coming up. I'm going to continue to work my way through this beast. Where am I at? That's where my bookmark currently is, so I'm not quite halfway through. As you can see, I just had a couple of things out because of medieval stuff. I've got my Ars Magica and I've got my Prince Valiant. Anyway, that's this video. Wow, I went on forever. My apologies. I think there was at least 2 rants in that video. If you enjoyed this long video, then, you know, support me in any way you feel is appropriate. Check out my links below where I've got Patreon. You can buy me a coffee. You can check out my author page. You can go to my Amazon wish list and pick me up a Dungeon Crawl Classics scenario if you feel like it. In the meantime, you know, check out other videos on the channel. Check out Orcus Dorcas, Shenanigans, and check out RPG Imaginings. They've got cool videos on this. The Gaming Gang also has done a couple of cool videos on this. So, yeah. Great. Till next time, take care.